Hi, I'm with Neal Bogosian today, and we're going to talk about his experiences with energy healing, specifically some with quantum touch and perhaps other things, as well as whatever comes up. So, thank you for joining me today. Really
Thank you
appreciate it.
for having me.
Yeah. So, you've had a lot of really interesting experiences with energy healing, I understand. I read your book. It's very exciting. It's going to be published in the near future, I believe.
Thank you.
And I'd love to hear, how did you discover energy healing?
Well, I've always believed that we are capable of doing so much more. I've always believed that we were never told the full story in school with regards to our capacities for human potential. And I've just always had a fascination and an interest in learning more and exploring the human mind, exploring the human body and heart, and exploring energy.
Right.
And as I delved more and more into it, I must credit you because I stumbled upon quantum touch and I said, oh my God, someone else feels the same way that I do. There's so much more out there. And I stumbled
Hmm.
upon the certification course for level one,
Yeah.
and I you know jumped at it and wanted to get certified in it immediately because it resonated with exactly who I am and what I believe can happen between two people. I believe that we do have the power to heal each other.
So, were there some early experiences that you had? I called them what life shocks. That's what I called them in my book because
Well,
they really shocked me to see these things occurring.
yes, yes. To be honest with you, I've had
Hmm.
angelic experiences. Going back, I can tell you a quick story. New York City, I was visiting for the very first time. I'm also a graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I studied performing arts for several years. When I visited New York City for the very first time, I was standing on the curb with my mother and father, and the cabs were zooming by, and the lights had yet to change. And I looked to my left, and I didn't see any more
Hmm.
cars coming. So I thought it was safe to step off the curb. I stepped off the curb. As soon as I had done that, I felt a hand grab my collar,
Whoa.
lift me right back up onto curbside, and a cab zoomed right past me. I would have been dead.
Wow.
And the irony is, I looked behind me, and there was this tall, tall man, very stoic face. He was looking straight ahead, did not make eye contact with me. And I said, thank you. And he said, you're welcome. And I was still in shock. And I looked to my right, and my mother was there. The light changes. We stepped down off the curb, and I said, Mom, did you just see that? See what? She didn't see it. No one saw it. I said, you didn't realize what just happened back there. That man just saved me. And she said, who? And I looked back, and he was gone too. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've also had experiences when I lived in Fort Worth, Texas, of angels again. Um, so I've always been kind of in that frequency, very aware, and it just led me further and further into the study of energy, into the study of what is in unseen space, because I believe that that which we cannot see in unseen space is far more powerful than that which we can. And it's unfortunate that our schools today, we teach our children everything that is physical, everything that we can only see, and that we have to always prove that which we cannot see. When in reality, it should be the reverse, because I believe the physical is almost an illusion. And what really is most powerful is what we can resonate with each other, the energy. It's beautiful. And when I first started to do my practicum for quantum touch, the practicum hours, I served as an intern in a rehabilitation slash nursing home. And I started to practice on some of the patients there. They let me in there, and I was free to work on whoever agreed to see me. And one of my very first clients or patients was this woman who she was having some disorders with her. Uh, it was basically a neurological disorder, and I started to work on her, and I started to send energy into her, and all of a sudden I was shocked because all of a sudden I see her starting to pulse back and forth. I said,
Mm.
"Oh my God, are you okay?" She said, "Oh yes. Whatever you're doing, just keep keep going. It feels wonderful." And it was literally a pulsating energy that was just resonating upwards and back, and her head was pulsating with um, the beat of it, basically with
Wow.
the flow. And it was beautiful because I knew it was a meeting of her energy with mine.
You know, I have seen so many people have that kind of experience that something's going on that's unexpected within their body, and it kind of concerns the practitioner. And you think, are you okay? And then, no,
Exactly.
this is better than okay. This is the healing. I had an early session when I used to be doing polarity therapy,
Hmm.
and we had 6 people running energy into one person. It was a technique I came up with years ago called the Polarity Circle. And this woman, everybody suddenly, we all felt a shock of energy go through our bodies all at the same time, and she just looked like she went out. And then her body started heaving, and we're all concerned. And then we see tears starting to come down her eyes as she's heaving like this. And it was like cartoon tears, one, 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 just like that. And then she starts howling in the deepest grief a human being could access. And she did this for about 5 or 8 minutes, and then she started feeling better, and the energy was surging through all of us through the whole time. And then she opens her eyes and sits up, and we had never seen anybody glow that brightly.
Hmm.
And so, from that experience and 100 other experiences, I've always taught the students, as you know, to trust the process, trust the energy, trust the system. The energy will go where it's needed and do what's needed. And you see these things happening sometimes, and you go, oh gosh, is this okay? And you find out
Absolutely.
it's more than okay. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It really is. I can say with certainty that about 30% of the clients that I've had, they do come to tears on the table. It's an
Yeah.
emotional release, and the tears they cannot explain. They actually end up saying, "I'm so sorry. I don't know why this is happening. I'm so sorry." And I always say, "No, it's absolutely perfectly fine. This is beautiful. It's a release that you're experiencing,
Yeah.
and you need to." And some of those clients ended up having very vivid and almost healing dreams later that night,
Yes.
and it's a purging. It's something that they've held in perhaps, and um, it's all energy, so you release that blockage.
Which is why, and it's something I didn't really put in the book very well, and it's be great for an addendum, but it's to tell the clients, hey, it's really common to have emotional releases. You might find yourself tearing, you might have this, and please just let yourself in on it because that's part of the process. No judgments here, it's all good. And just to inform the client ahead of time that that is one of the things that comes up on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's,
so what else happened when you're working at the nursing home?
um, I also observed that with the nursing home, with with those who were there for old age,
Right,
if you will, they had virtually resigned themselves. They had
right,
resigned their spirits,
yes,
and all they were constantly talking about was their pharmaceuticals or when were they going to get their next pill. And
right.
many of these people I observed were not very old. You know, they had fallen into the belief that they were old. And
That's
so, therefore, I was given a very fast dose of realization that we are truly as old as we think we are. We are truly as limited or as unlimited as we think we are. And it was rather painful because, as you know, certain people, when they reach a certain point of belief, you can't reverse it. It's very difficult to reverse it. You virtually have to pull out a pocket of light and show them to wow them to get them to listen to every word you said to reverse their thinking. And So I also observed that you know, we have the power to control our belief system, our bodies. Our bodies are very loyal servants. They will obey all of our thoughts. And so these people, they constantly were perpetuating how much they needed their medication or how much they were in pain,
It's
and
fascinating.
thus they remained in that state.
It's what I call hardening of the categories.
Yes, precisely.
They lock themselves into a set belief, and I really feel that the aging process and so much more is a bunch of beliefs that we can take apart and then free ourselves and have completely different experiences than our parents or grandparents did.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
And I also believe that through energy healing, I think it's still in its pioneering stages, and that we will eventually stumble upon a way to reverse aging, to
I'm
reverse.
working on it now.
Yeah, and it all of our organs have a certain dialogue, and I've read a little bit about telepathy, and I think that there is a level of telepathy that does occur between these organs, our muscles, and the energy that we are intending.
Well, let's jump off of energy healing for a second because this is so fascinating. I want to dive into it for a moment, and I want to get
Sure.
back to some of your more interesting experiences. But I believe that everything is consciousness, and it's all love, and we are the embodiment. We're not even particles. We're not. The matter that we think is matter is just these little energy packets, and the energy packets is pure consciousness, and it pops in and out of existence on a quantum level, and nobody even has a clue of what it is. But I think it's all magic, and it's all love, ultimately. And the materialists, the scientists who want to reduce everything to physical cause and effect, have completely lost the entire sense of everything being magic. And QT2, the level 2 quantum touch, absolutely demonstrates in seconds, mind-blowing, like when you untwist somebody in a few seconds without touching them, even though they're locking their hips and trying not to let the occiput change position. And it shows that the telepathy is real. It shows that the body responds. Now, I had the opportunity of meeting with Professor Rupert Sheldrake, the man.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was up at Joshua Tree, and I had been writing to him for some time, and he was really curious about what I was doing. And I had him and his wife Jill in a room with three of the other speakers, and I had the floor, so got to do my little song and dance with him. And we measured his wife, and he was very good at measuring. Some people just are clueless on how to measure the hips, and
Sure.
he measured her, and I measured her first. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "This is not a normal amount of imbalance between right and left." I said, "This looks like there's been some kind of severe accident or something." And she said, "Yes, I had some crushed discs." I said, "This is as far out as I've ever seen it, about 4.5 inches, roughly."
Wow.
And then I said, "Well, I only expect this to go in about 80% in the next 5 or 6 seconds," which is the most outlandish statement I could possibly have made. And so Rupert took his hands away, and I meditated, and he put his hands back, and it went from this far out to about that far out.
Right.
It went
Right.
just exactly what I said.
80%.
Yeah, about 80%. Yeah, and he said, "Well, it's clearly much better." Then she measured him, and then he measured one of the other speakers coming back in, and he saw the effect. Absolutely. But the implications and the meaning of this effect are what is of interest to me. Yeah, who cares about hips, okay? It's not really that fascinating. But it shows some of the principles that Rupert Sheldrake speaks of. Number one, the reality is not just material. Another one of the principles is the mind is not confined to the brain. Third, telepathy exists because I put out a thought form and her body responded. And the fourth of his 10 dogmas that he attacks the scientists for is the understanding that traditional medicine is not the only kind of medicine that can exist, and energy healing can be real. So 4 of the 10 dogmas were overtly addressed in seconds by doing that kind of a demonstration. And the scientific community has been locked into the idea that the only thing that's real are things that can be weighed and measured. It's all material. And that consciousness is an epiphenomena of brain activity. But brain activity may be more like the radio receiving the information and a transmitter than the computer hard drive metaphors.
Absolutely.
That's why, let me just continue my rant for another second, is why I think that Ray Kurzweil is completely out to lunch. Because they'll never download consciousness if they don't know what consciousness is. And if I can do this, I talked to one guy who was working on a project of creating artificial brains, and I said, you're missing the point, because human beings can do this thing. And he said, all right, well, maybe you can, but I've never seen it, it's not important to me, therefore it's probably not significant. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it's the most significant part of us, not the least significant. Because what are we without our love? What are we without love? We're cardboard. It's empty. It's hollow. It's meaningless.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, no, we could go on for hours about that. I've also come to the understanding that higher intelligence, if you will, otherwise known as ETs, UFOs, ufology, telepathy is very huge. That's what they use to power themselves. And,
perhaps so.
For us to believe that we are all there is in this universe is vastly ignorant, as you know, and there is so much more. And we are at the very early stages of this. Carl Jung even commented that it is in the substrata of the subconscious mind where all of this is born, where ideas are born, getting into esoteric thought and thinking.
Right.
And it's almost like a beautiful fantasy land that whatever we think about, we do bring about. Perhaps it may not manifest in physical reality immediately, but it's out there somewhere.
It is. I heard a podcast recently, it was Joe Rogan's show, interviewing Brian Cox, the famous physicist, scientific discoverer and speaker. He speaks on many topics of science, and he's charming and highly articulate. And they were talking about the limits of what we can know. And Brian was saying, we will never explore another galaxy because our galaxy is 100,000 light years across, just our galaxy. And to get to the next galaxy, you're 2 million light years, and you're not going to be able to travel the speed of light, so we're not going 2 million years on a journey somewhere else, so it's never going to happen. And Joe Rogan was a little more open-minded, being the ignorant dreamer that he is, and he said, well, we're only aware of the laws of physics that we're aware of. There may be laws of physics that we haven't conceived of yet. And he said, yes, but you can't violate the laws of physics. And so his laws of physics are the laws of physics. And
fixed, right.
Fixed. And Joe was saying, but in a 100,000 years at the speed of progress that we're making, don't you think we might find something else? And he said, you can't violate physics. And so I thought that was really fascinating that Joe, in his relative ignorance, as I have relative ignorance, we're not smart enough to know that something is impossible. But what it's been so funny because I've been wanting to show physicists my little demonstration as a clear way of saying, hey, mind has impact on matter, material science is limited in its perspective, and once you know that, then you realize that if I can do that, then the question is, what else is possible? Can we send our mind across to another galaxy? Well, of course. And if I was more open and aware, and my third eye was more open, I could probably explore planets and galaxies throughout the entire universe without, getting out of my sweats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it has already been proven that the mind does have an impact on matter. It can affect the literal outcome of certain equations. I think David Deutsch also may have explored some of that and some of the computer models that he came up with also. So you're absolutely right. It's really amazing that scientists only accept that which they can see and physically prove. They
Yes.
lack the imagination. However, you said a very interesting word. You said relative, and I do believe that it's all about relativity. You know, their experiences are defined by their perceptions of those experiences.
Yes.
And since your experiences are different from theirs, they're going to perceive things completely differently. But they, I believe, come vastly short when they outright dismiss that
That's the
which you said.
problem. That's
That's the
that's
problem.
the arrogance to
Yes.
assume that I know everything,
And
and
there's
that
ego.
and that you can't know anything. There's been a lot of work with random number generators. So
Exactly.
when Princess Di died or 9/11 happened, and the random number generators go all over the map, and they're all excited saying, "Oh my God, it's proven that the random number generators are different." But it's kind of like being able to shine a light at a wall and say, "Oh look, once every few years we can actually see there's a light on the wall." And when I put my awareness and untwist somebody in a few seconds and get the occipital ridge to move, it's not like a random light on a wall. We've got a focused laser beam on a spot. And it's
Absolutely.
directed at this moment without having to wait for anything. While these two different groups are sending up all these random number generators all around the world trying to show that the thing is happening, we've already proven it. But we but there's this incredible resistance because, as one chiropractor said to me, I did the demonstration for him, and he said, "Yes, it's back in alignment, but where's the mechanism?" And I said, "The mechanism is heart energy, it's love." He said, "But there's no mechanism." I said, "That is the mechanism. It's just not a physical mechanism." And that was like saying, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
It had
Yes.
no meaning to him whatsoever.
Right. They have no. It. They fall short in their imagination, which shocks me because I believe the imagination gives birth to so much. It gives birth to ideas. It gives birth to the what ifs. It gives birth to the hypotheticals, and they lack that. And the only thing that is scary to me, I'm also a certified school teacher. Um, what is scary to me is that we're teaching our children now with all of these fixed standardized tests
Oh, yeah.
to think in one way and one way only. We're not enacting their imaginations. And I believe
Yes.
it requires a certain amount of imagination to believe in what we do, you know, um, because Western medicine and Western thinking is so fixed. It's, okay, you need to be dependent on this, and you need to live in a very orderly fashion and make sure you get up and do A, B, C, and D. And there are certain mores and norms that we as people are expected to follow in this third dimensional physical realm.
Right.
And the only thing that scares me is um, what we're teaching the kids today is to exactly do that, to not imagine, to not believe in wonder of what might not be told to them. They're not exploring fully. Um, and yet, conversely, the hope therein is that when my final year teaching high school, I started to realize and observe something that was very fascinating, and that was the system, the adult system, was starting to lose relevance with some of the students. They knew it was, pardon me for saying this, but BS. They knew
Yeah.
it was just
It's
all
total.
fixed,
It's total bullshit.
taking their minds and putting them into a very nice, neat box.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't fit into that box, there's something wrong with you. And they knew, no, that's wrong.
Yes.
There's something wrong here. So that's the hope. The hope is how many of us, how many of the people amongst the masses are going to start to ask questions, because that's where I believe wisdom and knowledge and the all of the awakenings that we need to have they're all in the questions that we need to ask.
Oh, absolutely. And And when you think about it, one of the most fun and exciting things to ever do in your life is to learn something. And
Yes,
they have made learning painful and boring.
you're
And you
absolutely right.
get mostly burned out people teaching who are underpaid, who have been teaching the same crap year after year, forced to just follow a book and go through this dry information over and over again, trying to keep bored children who want to get out and play and have adventures and have excitement, trying to contain them and punish
Yes,
them in this mini prison called a school.
you're absolutely right.
And it's completely broken. and
Yes,
and so what I'm passionate about is seeing the aliveness of the learning process again. And speaking of which, I read in your book so many absolutely fascinating experiences that you had.
mhm,
And I just feel there's such a deep awakening for people to realize the possibilities. And you have and one of the things about quantum touch is that people say, well, what's it good for? And I'm always talking about my little demonstration because I think it's so exciting. But the wide range of things. Can you
mhm.
talk about some of the things that you've addressed and seen happen in your? I mean, you went through a wide range of things in your book.
Yes, and quantum touch has served me as an amazing foundation. It has been the beginning of all else
Yes.
for me, and because my exploration of energy leading up to my discovery of quantum touch was, it was idle. It was idle layman's terms. It was delving in on my own. It was personal self study. And quantum touch gave me the validation like, oh my God, now here's the first threshold. I can
Yes.
take that and build upon that. And I started to really apply quantum touch in a myriad of ways. Some of the experiences I've personally experienced is from ranging from people who have had debilitating injuries from car accidents in which their necks literally moved and shifted. Their spinal columns literally moved and shifted. And in the middle of the session, they commented, "Oh my God, I just felt that move." And I
Yeah.
said, at first they're alarmed, and you have to say, "That's good. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. Just it
Right.
feels really good."
Yeah.
I also experienced. I was working on a client whose child was sitting in a chair watching, and um, this parent had some issues uh, with regards to, how do I say this? They didn't get the relations between parent and child were not the best going back into
Yeah.
time. While I was working on this individual, I intended to go back in time and literally try to undo some of the blockages from the past that were causing this individual's injuries. What ended up happening was the child had a release while sitting in that chair
Wow.
because, and that's what actually gave me the credence that, or the validation that a certain degree of time travel works with this. You can go
Oh,
back in
no
time
question about it.
and undo things. You can undo things, and there's cellular memories,
You know,
cellular memories, stress. But she felt. She said to me, she said, "Oh my God," she said, "I felt this like film just lift up off me." And she said it was amazing. I said, "Well," I said, "at that exact time, I was intending to go
yes.
back in time to undo some of the horrors that
Yeah.
you had told me about, you had experienced with your parent."
Exactly.
So that's another one. A third one that I can relate that I discuss in my book and is also photographed on my site. I was working on my friend. She had an injury to her leg, and it was actually a spur of the moment healing because she came over. She said, "Oh my God, I hurt my leg. I had just come home from the gym." Anyway, I said, "All right, come on, sit in the chair. I'll work on it." While I was working on her leg, she got the wherewithal. She got the impulse, which I credit her wholly, to grab her cell phone and take a picture of the area where I was working on her. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I just want to see something. That was her phrase. I just want to see something. So she started to take some pictures, and all of a sudden we saw these light orbs all around her leg, all around where the injury was and where I was intending energy.
Yeah.
So I said, wait a minute. I said, I have to make sure it's not the sunlight.
Yeah.
So I said, let's just wait a minute. Let's wait a minute, you know. So we waited. We took the photos about 5 minutes later after I had stopped working on it.
Yeah.
The energy orbs were gone.
Wow.
And it was not the sunlight.
Yeah.
It was they were absolutely pure light bodies that were all around her leg, and they were emanating from me into her.
I saw the pictures. I saw them. They're totally remarkable. They're beautiful.
They actually blew me away. To this day, you know, I thank her because it's more and more validation to show somebody who doesn't believe, you know. It's more and more validation. And sometimes living in the Northeast here where I live, energy healing is not as known, if you will, or acceptable as it is perhaps in California or in places like New Mexico, you know. So you have to do a little bit extra to introduce it to people because the people here are so set in their ways, you know. So things like that, things like having the photographs to actually show as proof, help validate that, hey, this works, you know. Another story that I can share with you that's rather personal to me, it was one of the very first clients that I worked on who ended up passing on. This was an individual who had late-stage cancer. I was called by their spouse in a last-ditch effort to try and save them, to try and do anything.
Yeah.
When I started to work on this individual, their doctor was preparing a chemotherapy cocktail. Now, chemotherapy is bad enough. When you add the word cocktail to it, it's like, uh-oh. You know, totally experimental. They had agreed to it. And I knew immediately, I didn't say this out loud to them, but I knew that I was behind the 8 ball to try and make something work.
Right.
So at first, the client was reluctant, and they said, what is this? This is like snake oil? Nope, it's not snake oil. Do I have to take off my clothes here? Just like a massage? Nope, you're going to keep your clothes on. I'm just going to get on my table. Well, I worked on them about 5 times. By the 4th time, the ice was broken between us. They were very receptive to me. The client looked at me and said, you know, every single time you work on me, I feel great the next day. Now here's the interesting part. They had a last regular normal chemotherapy session between the 2nd and 3rd time that I saw them. By that 4th time, the date was set for the chemotherapy cocktail. But by that 4th time, the client gained 7 pounds. The client looked at me and said, I feel like I want to work out again. I want to go back to the gym.
Yes.
The client was feeling energetic. Even after that last chemotherapy session, they were getting their vitality back, which was so beautiful. We had connected on a personal level.
Yes.
So, and the other thing was their spouse, I walk into the door, the spouse said, you'll never believe it. I said, what? We were invited by friends to go out on a boat all weekend long after you worked on them the last time, and we went, and they're great. He's feeling great. So his oncologist when he walked into the office, looked at him and said, "Wow, you look great. What are you doing?" And they came short of telling them
Yes.
that they had retained, quote unquote, an energy healer.
Right.
And the doctor said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I don't know what it is, but just keep doing it." Well, after the fifth visit with him, my fifth session with him, he was scheduled to go in for the chemo cocktail the following week. And I didn't hear anything for about a week and a half after. And so I sent their spouse a text message and I said, "How are you? How's everything?"
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was he succumbed to the pain that was brought about by the chemo cocktail.
God.
Now, as you know, Richard, we are not in a position to deter anyone from Western medicine care. We're not in the position to replace doctors in any way. But it was very hard for me to not dispute the fact that, all right, he was feeling better. He gained 7 pounds. What late stage cancer patient do you know of that gains 7 pounds and wants to go to the gym?
Yeah, and there's so much bias to say
Yes.
that alternative stuff can't work and traditional stuff is the only answer, but the third leading cause of death is physician error, giving medicines inappropriately or people taking too much or whatever. And it's so frustrating to have solutions that we see from anecdotal perspectives working better than 90% of the time.
Yes.
Clearly, over and over and over again. In fact, it's probably your experience too, but we're really deeply surprised when we don't get an effect. When we don't see something, it's like, oh wow, that's very rare. And so by the way, when that happens for me, I say, okay, let's find the emotional cause. And we go straight to self-created health. We find the emotional cause, they release that, and then the thing goes away.
That's a great point. I've also noticed that the majority of the clients, as soon as I put my hands on them and I start to run energy, and please tell me if you've also experienced this, there's, lack of a better word, we become intuitives as well. I can get the images and some of the emotional issues that the
Yes.
client is having.
Yeah.
They come to us in messages or sensations, what have you. But it's all about releasing some of that emotional pain. You're absolutely right.
It's extremely common for people to become intuitive, to have the telepathy while doing the energy healing. A lot of people say, before I did it, I never had any of that. Now I know exactly where to put my hands. I can see inside them. I know what they're feeling. I know where to go, and things like this, which is one of the reasons we have Deborah Gare, who's one of those people who had the awakening experience too. She had the super horrible auto accident. Everything went away in one session. Doctor couldn't believe he didn't have to give her the painful injections and so forth. And she now teaches a workshop through Quantum Touch, if people are interested in how to see and perceive energy, because so many people are having these awakenings of the energy, of the telepathy from the session, from the work, that's a whole area of investigation that many people are pursuing. And I personally feel like I am just an explorer who's doing a survey of the territory, and I don't really know very much about it at all. And so when I wrote the QT2 book, there is so much there. I'm actually thinking of writing more than one book on different chapters. There's so much in there. It's such a vast territory. And people say, oh, Richard, I want to get a session from Richard. And I say, why? They said, well, you've been doing this so long and you're so good. I said, were the Wright brothers the best pilots? Just because I found things doesn't mean that I have some superlative ability. Anybody with a good heart and good intention can do this work. And you get better with practice, of course, but there's a vast territory to explore.
Yes,
And it's so exciting. But one of my deepest desires, one of my deepest frustrations and desires together, is to have an impact on the belief system of the world, to appreciate the idea that there's more than just the physical material reality. And so that's why I have my quick little demos that I like to do, just to say, okay, you don't believe it? Let me just show you something. And then you get to watch the cognitive dissonance in action. You get to see these ridiculous responses of people who don't want to see what just happened in front of them and want to go into some strange denial that doesn't even make any sense.
Absolutely. And I have to ask you, when you are working on people, do you visualize also? Are you visualizing the area that you intend the energy to go?
I'm putting my awareness there. But in the level 1, of course, I'm using my hands and directing it through my hands. In the level 2, I'm working by amplifying the heart energy really deeply. And then I imagine, I can do it with my eyes open as well as closed.
Right.
And I just imagine where it is, and maybe I'll create a visualization even with my eyes open. You can imagine with your eyes open or closed, by the way. And people do it all day long when there's daydreaming in school. You've seen that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's good. And then you see things happening right away, like clockwork. And I would say that little demo with untwisting people, that's happening far better than 99% of the time. And when I was at the University of Hong Kong doing a keynote address and untwisting a whole stage full of people simultaneously, it's just a little way of saying, okay, we're not just these physical bodies, because that is considered physiologically impossible. That while a person is standing without force, nothing could possibly untwist their hips. You have no musculature to do it.
Right, absolutely.
And then I came up with a new one recently that I've been doing. I've always known the occipital ridge moved, but I found that some people who have a really deep imbalance in the occipital ridge, if they put their thumbs into that ridge and press up, they can actually feel, oh, my right thumb is a lot higher, or my left thumb is a lot higher. And I'll say, well, just feel it 3 or 4 times so you know exactly where it is, and lift your thumbs up. And they do. And I meditate for 5 seconds. Okay, put your thumbs down. And I get on camera, I've got a few of these where somebody goes, how is this possible? How could this happen? That the whole cranial bones actually moved into alignment in a few seconds. I didn't even feel it until I put my thumbs down and realized my thumbs were like this and now they're like that behind my head. How could this happen? Well, it's a demonstration that love is actually real force that has a physical impact on the outer reality. And if that is true, then we're spiritual beings.
Absolutely.
There's no way around it.
Yes.
The implication. And so we can move forward and backwards through time. We can do things that we never dreamed of. And that's why the list of applications is so wide of what we're discovering now, and why when you actually explore any of these applications, you go, oh my God, what are the implications of these applications, and where can I take this? And that's one of the reasons why I never see myself as the rule maker. I see myself as somebody who breaks the rules and creates a new level of freedom and says, please explore this and tell me what you find out. Because I'm not the only person who can discover things. Everybody can discover things, which is one of the reasons why we've always had the practitioner program say, come up with new insights. What are you discovering? It's not about what I discovered. Yes, it is about that, but then it's also what can you bring to the table and what can you add to the story?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess absolutely right. I think that what you've done though, you're serving as a catalyst for more. You're furthering the dialogue of it all.
Yes.
And the more people that find this or realize the truth within it, I believe it's going to circulate and ricochet, because we are all one. And the more people that believe in this, that resonant energy will build and build and build until we all feel it. And I do believe one day, I'm not sure when,
Yes.
but I do believe that when that day comes, it will be a euphoria unlike anyone has ever experienced.
Mm.
And that could be the proverbial heaven on earth when we all finally realize, hey, we're all in this together and we are unlimited beings. We have no limits. And I think that's what you espouse also, that, hey, with this we can do anything. Anything is possible. There are many applications for it. There are countless applications for it.
Countless, just countless applications.
But I think it's so beautiful, and I wish that people who wake up every day, I wish for them to just imagine more. I wish for them to think higher. Um, I wish for them to ask themselves what might be possible that I haven't explored yet, because I think that's where they're going to start to find so much. And what I always say to my clients is that if you're seeking it, you will eventually find it, because that's energy too. Our thoughts are energy.
Right.
So you start to bring these things into your reality just by merely beginning to take action on that which you seek.
Yes.
And which is the perfect explanation of how I found this and you and quantum touch.
It's so beautiful. My friend Chris Duffield, who's a scientist,
I've heard of him. Yes.
Yes, he one of his comments was of quantum touch too, was that it's as if I've discovered a new human operating system, and now we're discovering all the apps.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful to put it.
And when you find out that these are just apps to the operating system, how many apps are there? I mean, I think iPhone now has like 400,000 apps, which is a lot, but that's not all the apps. There's more and more apps, and it's so funny to me because I'll meet people who say, well, can it do anything for this? And it's something I never thought of. And I said, well, let's think about how that could be applied. Oh yeah, here's an idea. We can try this. And by and large, whatever you try, you're usually able to make some progress or do something really wonderful. Because the unseen world of our love is vast and unknown. And as little children of unlimitedness, we're just discovering our limited nature. It's so wide open. And then the other thing that you said that I wanted to get to before I forgot was we are at the verge of a spiritual planetary awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And the powers that be have been trying to keep it separated, and I want all the resources, but they lost their soul in the process of not realizing that when they're harming anybody else, they're harming themselves. Mm-hmm. And that the greed doesn't really feel good. Yes, it's nice to have all the toys, but that doesn't really feel good on a soul level. It kind of hurts you. As one German industrialist was being interviewed on some big station, well, aren't you upset about the high taxes? And he thought for a moment and he said, no, I'm not. He said, I do not wish to be a wealthy man in a poor country. Mm-hmm. Because the wealthy man in a poor country is going to be afraid his daughter is going to be kidnapped.
That's right, exactly.
And how good does it feel to see all the other people around you in that level of suffering?
And fear.
And
yes.
Fear, yeah. And
it's
so
a soul-sucking emotion. It's a disempowering emotion. And that's the other thing too, is that when people start to discover this, they will feel empowered.
Yes.
They will feel like they are taking control of their own lives, that they're not always dependent on something else. I once had a conversation with somebody who, she said, I believe that when we die, that's it, we're just done. I said, really? And what I believe is that love is the proof that we go on forever.
Yes.
Because what I say to some people, I say, just take a moment of pause and just try to imagine eternal, everlasting love for your parents, for instance, or for your loved one. Can you imagine loving them forever? And normally they say yes. And I say, okay, now think of something like hate or something like that. Can you imagine hating something? No. it's rather finite. It's not infinite like
Yeah.
love is.
Right.
And so this person argued with me a little bit, and she said, I just believe that when we die, there's nothing. I said, well, what is nothing? She said, well, it's just black space, it's emptiness. I said, how do you know? How do you know what nothing is if you've never been there?
Right.
How do you, if you can define nothingness, if you can project into
Right.
the future like that, and if you can define nothingness, then you do go on forever. Because you wouldn't be able to even define what nothing is if we just stopped existing. And, you know, she paused and she smiled and she got it. She said, I'm not going to say anything anymore. I said, okay. I said, what? I said, there isn't an end. There's only love and there's life, and we keep going.
I think for me, the understanding that we can project love and have a physical impact implies that we're not just physical bodies.
Yes.
That I can think about somebody in Hong Kong and do a healing, give healing energy, and have them respond instantly in Hong Kong, which I've done.
Mm-hmm.
It really breaks down the whole materialistic belief on the limitations, and when you come up with that, then it's hard to say that it's like turning off a TV set and the picture goes dark and there's nothing beyond it. But my most profound experiences were on mushrooms, about 5.5, 6 grams of mushrooms, which is known as a heroic dose. And when I've been in that state, laughing for like 5.5 hours solid, howling at the cosmic joke, because I got the joke. And the joke was that I believed I was limited. And it is the funniest thing in the world. And I've been back to that state a few times. And each time, it's not an intellectual thing, because there's no intellect in that state. But there's knowing, direct knowing. And the knowing is always the same. The knowing is we're infinite beings, it's infinite love, this is who and what I am, I'm connected to the source of all love, that there's no end to it, that there's no such thing as death. And they've actually been doing research through a group called MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And they've gone through all the hoops and hurdles to get it legal and do everything legally. And they found out that about, I think it's close to 80% of all the people who took psychedelic mushrooms had what they called the most valuable or spiritual experience of their life. And most of them, and the cancer patients they gave it to, lost their fear of death. Because it's not like you go to some random place. What it actually seems to do is to turn off the logical receptors, parts of the brain that keeps track, and it's what I'll call, what you think of as the functional worker logical processes. And you're not capable of really driving a car, doing things that you wouldn't ever want to. You couldn't. You really couldn't function. You barely walk. So it turns off all those. And so actually it doesn't make the mind more stimulated. It actually makes the mind less stimulated. It turns off parts of the head that do the logical, rational stuff. And then everybody sees the same thing if they have a spiritual inclination. They realize, oh my God, we're all connected to Source. It's all love. And how can I be afraid of losing that when I lose it? Because you're not your body. The body is the vehicle. And television signal doesn't die when you turn off the TV set. And we're more the signal than we are the set.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. I'm not sure if you studied Nikola Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
Tesla, in his book, The Problem of Creating Human Energy, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about in there about how we are all one. And he said we have that conscious choice, whether to positively add to the mass,
Yes.
i.e. through love and through the things that you're doing with quantum touch also, or we can negatively subtract to it from it, and that includes, heinous things like murder. And
Yeah.
what I believe that if those people committing these heinous acts, if they actually understood that they are hurting their own species, that they are actually subtracting from themselves, from their future, and from our overall mass of oneness,
Yes.
I do believe that we would see a sharp decrease, because I don't think they understand the ramifications of their actions. And you're absolutely right that the implications of love itself um, are endless, and they're not quite seeing that yet. And I'm not sure if it is education. I'm not sure where it starts. We've seen a degradation of the family unit, which is also a form of love, a form of foundation. But I believe quantum touch and energy healing gets us back to the foundations of who we innately are. It starts to rebuild the interconnectedness with that oneness. And I believe it's such a healthy path. I can't tell you how good I feel
Yes.
whenever I use it, whenever I think of it. Even my hands will start to buzz instantly.
Yes.
As soon
I've
as I
had that
just
happen many times.
yes, as soon as I just think it. So I'm not saying that. I don't want to sound corny and say, hey, this is the beginning to world peace, but you know what? It really could be. If if people start to explore this, and since it has a foundation in love, in goodness, in wonderful intentions, in harmony, we haven't said that word, and
Yeah.
it's so harmonious, and it can elicit harmonious energy. People who come into my home where I practice, they said, "Oh my God, I love just sitting here. I love just being here," and
Yeah.
it makes sense to me because everyone who I see, I want to give them love of healing, and it resonates, and it's all over the place. So they love sitting on my couch. They love being in the room where I heal. They love just being here, and
And
they feel at peace.
and the process of doing it raises you.
Exactly.
The process of giving makes you whole. People think that many people are bored, and the antidote to boredom is giving, and the antidote to not loving is loving. And if the answer to the questions that we keep asking is we want to live in a better world, well, if loving and generosity would do anything to make the world a little better, then if more people know how to do this, it's pretty clear that maybe it's not the end all, but it's the right direction. And I like starting from really obvious points. It's clearly taking people closer to where we know we want to go. Maybe there's many other better things out there eventually, but this, when it raises your spirits and lifts you up, and there's so many avenues to take this, it's just amazing.
Right. And I think that if you're not getting the results that you desire right away, increase the dose.
That's
Increase the dose of love.
Yeah. There was a great quote about that. It said, if the medicine is love, and if you're not getting the results, increase the dose. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fabulous. It really is. And again, I am indebted and very grateful to you for making this modality widely known and available, because again, it creates an absolutely fabulous foundation for everything, and then some. And also, I also want to point out that I'm reading a book right now by a Russian scientist, and it deals with some of the finer points of esoteric theory and thought.
Mm-hmm.
But it talked about how a scientist there was experimenting with energy healing, and the hemoglobin increased in the bloodstream in those patients on whom he worked.
Nice.
And so it's not just happening here. This isn't just America.
Right.
Quantum touch is worldwide. energy healings worldwide.
Certainly.
And as I tell many people who are skeptical of it, if you go to Bali, Indonesia, you go to New Zealand, energy healers are as plentiful as doctors. And they work in concert. And they are widely accepted. As a matter of fact, in Bali, Indonesia, they're probably on every fourth block.
Hmm.
So energy healing has been around for ages, longer than Western medicine.
Much longer. Western medicine's a new invention. The whole
Yes.
allopathic idea of using poison to try to kill the disease before the medication kills you is a relatively new concept. And it was a reaction to homeopathy and energy healing and other things that got funded and so it's a bizarre idea, but it's a very deeply ingrained money-making tradition now.
Yes.
Where people believe in the physicality of it, which is one of the reasons, again, why I'm so adamant about breaking the addiction to a materialist perspective of reality, changing the paradigm, because there's so many ramifications of this that exclude other kinds of solutions that are not logical based on the traditions. And there's a real dissonance, a cognitive dissonance of people even being willing to look at the outcomes because they know it can't be true, so why should I look at it?
Yes, and I think that, I think the proof to some of that can simply be in looking at the statistics of pharmaceutical overdoses right now that are absolutely rampant.
Yes.
And, putting their faith in a pill. And what I wish for people to do is to consider things like holistic measures, like energy healing, like quantum touch, to get rid of their pain, to get rid of their anguish. And if that doesn't work and you need to take a pharmaceutical, okay, fine. But first, I wish they would try this first, because the pharmaceuticals are ruining many lives. I've seen them too.
You've got
also had clients like that.
Of course, you've got the nutrition, and to stop eating the junk and the sugars and the fried foods and the sodas and all that. You've got the energy work. You've got the emotional stuff. You got exercise, and when you do those things, and then connect to spirituality and connect to your joy and your love, and start using the imagination that you talked about to start dreaming again.
Yes.
And start imagining possibilities and start being excited. When people do that, I would say between energy healing and the nutrition and the emotions and those things, we could probably reduce 90% of the medical stuff. But the whole insurance debate that was happening in this country just looked like how to give money to insurance companies, and it wasn't about prevention, and it wasn't about a shift of consciousness. It was just about where money was being spent. And I don't even want anything that these insurance companies, I don't want your medication.
I agree.
I don't want that. I want to use all the alternative stuff that I can access. Now, sure, if I got an infection that was moving up my leg, I'm going straight to the antibiotics, and I'm happy to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, if my finger got cut off, sew it back on, please, thank you, appreciate it. But for almost everything else, I want to use the things that induce healing, not the things that induce that drug kind of reaction, because that doesn't cause healing. Or as one person said, the migraine was not caused by a lack of drugs that you took. The conditions you have weren't from your sleeping problems were not from a lack of Ambien.
Right.
These are other issues, and using symptomatic measures to
and this goes to the root of that. I think the pills will, as most people will agree, the pills put a Band-Aid on it.
Yes.
But holistic therapy and a healthy lifestyle seeks to go to the source, and does go to the source, and starts to undo these things, so people can live a better life.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like we've really wrapped up a lot of wonderful ideas together in a
Well,
relatively.
I thank you very, very much.
Well, I really thank you because what you've done essentially is you've taken what I've offered, you've applied it, you've worked on lots and lots of people, you've seen the miracles, you've seen how you've changed as a result, and how hard your heart is opening more and more as a result of doing it, and how much deep satisfaction you get from it, and then all the people that you're touching and they're touching, and see those nice waves. And
Yeah, by default also, and I realize that quantum touch certification does not mean you have a certification in holistic counseling, but by default, that's also what I find myself doing as well. It's
nice.
holistic counsel, because you are becoming that intuitive. You are seeking to go to the source and make the clients feel better. And inevitably, it gets into lifestyles, it gets into choices, it gets into what
Yes.
people are choosing. And what I always tell my clients is that, look, if you don't, dependent on the injury or the issue, if you don't change your habits, the same issues will continue to come back. You've got to shift your habits.
So,
And so it's a form of holistic counsel that you're actually starting to direct them of what's good for them and what's not good for them.
Neal, where are you located?
I am in Rhode Island,
Rhode
the
Island.
smallest state in this wonderful country.
Okay, very good. Well, you have a website?
Yes, I have. It's quantumenergytreatment.com.
Okay, so if people want to get distant healing sessions from you, are you available?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, you may get a few calls,
That's
and
fine.
it would be wonderful if people live in the East Coast there near Rhode Island and Boston and wherever, and they want to come in and see you. I'm sure that'd be wonderful too, and they can catch you through your website. We'll put a
Yes.
link. We'll put a link up for that as well.
Thank you.
Anyway, I really want to thank you so much. This has been inspiring and informative to me, and I always love to get that good juice going about what's possible.
It's an honor.
And
Thank you.
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And I hope we stay in touch and let this be the beginning. Perhaps we could do something together.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Okay, that was it. I'll turn off the video recording.